Welcome to the second panel of this event. This space is called How do urban centers prepare for critical episodes of pollution? What tools do they use? And what do they use to manage air quality?
I will now introduce the moderator, and some speakers will have a little bit more time for a presentation, and then we will pass the floor to the others. So I will now introduce Beatriz Cardenas, the Global Director of Air Quality WRI. As a leader of air quality, she is responsible of developing the program One Atmosphere, which is part of the initiative that are integrated by the Ross Center in WRI. Starting from the fact of creating equality around access to clean air in our cities. And Beatriz has the mission of creating or taking forward climate action in the various cross-cutting initiatives that are created inside the cities program in WRI, as well as contributing to human health and ecosystems around climate action. Beatriz works closely with air quality teams in India, Africa, and Indonesia, as well as she coordinates air quality teams in WRI, Mexico, and Colombia. Beatriz is an expert engineer biochemist from the University Metropolitan in Iztapalapa, and also a master's degree from the University in Massachusetts. She has also studied in Colegio de Mexico around development and environmental issues. Let me introduce the whole panel right now. We will also have Edson Ortiz. He is a chemical engineer and master in environmental engineering, 11 years of experience in science of the atmosphere and climate change. He has consulted various governmental and private entities on air quality, implementation of meteorological instruments, and strategic emission mitigation. He has led, during the last 6 years, the meteorological moderation of air quality of the Environment Ministry in Bogota. We also have here Armandina Valdez, who is part of the Monterrey City team. She's also an engineer, chemist, manager in textile engineer in Monterrey. She recently was appointed as director of the Air Quality Agency in Nuevo León. Prior to this position, she was part of the Air Quality Management Office, and she also worked on air quality, climate change, and emission recording. As part of this panel, we also have Diana Ramirez, chemical engineer from the Antioquia University, specialist in engineering. She has worked in environmental issues related to air and sound quality, and she has also worked in metropolitan projects. Currently, Diana is leader of the air quality program and noise of the Ministry of Environmental Issues in the Bucaramanga area. And we also have Ana Soleima from the metropolitan area. She is also a chemical engineer with a specialization in science, technology, and innovation. She has more than 20 years of experience in air quality management, governance, and implementation of environmental programs and plans, as well as air quality management and supervision. Having said that, Beatriz, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, everyone. Well, this is a challenge because we have so many things to talk about today. And the idea of developing this panel is that, as we heard in previous panels, is that there is good coordination in several offices, but the challenges occur when we aim to implement such agreements. In WRI, we have been working on a tool based on data that allows cities to make better decisions. And based on this idea of linking those who create and generate data based on technical and scientific aspects that are there in many occasions, but are not used by cities, not because they don't understand them or because they don't have the capacity to do that, but because this is just not connected. We find, for example, as well that in Bogota, they have a very robust technical team. They generate data, they use the data, and they can use other data as a consequence. What we've seen is that it is necessary sometimes to link, to connect these tools of those people that are generating data with those who use that data. However, these users, these cities, need to tell everyone what they need because in many cases, the scientific community is not as open in terms of what cities need. And we will be talking about this example as one of those tools that can allow for that. This is why we allowed for Bogota and Monterrey to expand on their experiences, because we know that we will also have our two panelists that will be talking about their use of this tool. And we want to use this space to share with you all reflection around the question, what would happen if all of this data that has been generated by the scientific community were to be connected with cities and vice versa? How can cities communicate what they need so that that data can be made available for them? And that is when we talk about the important work that WRI is doing. We want to make an impact, but sometimes we don't necessarily have the information that the cities need and who is working on this type of data. Therefore, the need for this panel. First, we will ask Edison to tell us about his experience with this tool. In previous sessions, we heard that many cities that have this type of high levels of pollution, many cities don't meet the expected levels as per the Ministry of Health. But as Jorge was saying, some of these levels are sometimes exacerbated, are extremely high. However, we now have low-cost sensors and satellites that can corroborate this information. And we have more people that are more sensitized about how they feel when the air quality is not great. So we know more when the air quality is not as it should be. There are more information, more data, more tools that allow governments and institutions and scientific research institutions to act on this problem, and particularly civil society is interested in this. So what is Bogota? What is Monterrey doing? What is the Valle of Aburrá doing? And we are also interested in knowing what other cities are doing around these tools. So we will hear two presentations, and then we will open the floor to a panel where we will also listen the participation of our panelists. So we have three panelists available today. And first we will go with Edison. Thank you very much, Betty. Good evening, everyone. My name is Edison Ortiz. And the idea of this presentation, I'd like to summarize as much as I can, is to show you the end of the tunnel, the light at the end of the tunnel. And I'd like to show you that we have this portal that we have been working on, that we work with the Ministry of Health, that is our last piece of communication around air quality forecast to the general population. And I will go really quickly around what the features of this tool is and how the Ministry of Health and WRI working together were able to implement a forecasting model at a regional level. And it is important to mention that this type of modeling and forecasting exercises have been done for many years, either by universities or some ministries of the environment have also done this type of exercises. And part of the studies and the models that have been done in recent years have made us understand that the influence of biomass has a real impact. This is the bridge between the emissions that occur in Antioquia, for example, or in the Amazonian area, and what we are seeing in the air quality of this area. And we notice what this type of impact is. Of course, this is a team that was created for several years now, and we use this tool that allows us to characterize specific problems and to know how to address them. We are always aiming to find new ways of using these tools, and that's how we found WRI to work on that. WRI mentioned that they had a pilot that they were working on, which is now called the CanAIRy Alert. And based on this project, we were able to work on air quality forecasting modeling for forests. Okay, let me give you a short summary of the tools that we have. But in reality, sometimes we talk about tools, but these are a lot of tools that are gathered together to achieve sometimes only one result, so that we can inform citizens with the greatest detail possible what the air quality forecasting is. And we have 4 global models that are not necessarily run by us, but rather managed by various international entities. Some of them are NASA, the European Union, among others. And as part of these global models, we have the forecasting models that we use with WRI. We have local models that are managed by us, that are executed by us, that are analyzed by us as well. And those are the ones that allow us to provide a higher resolution, let's say, to the concentrations in the city and the meteorology of the city. And at this level of administration, we bring the details more granular. You will see that there are more specific details around the floor, about the structures, around traffic, around roads, can be actually important for this information. And this is how we have started to implement microenvironmental models to understand how the environment behaves at the level of the streets, how even, for example, urban areas in some specific zones actually behave. We are at the end of the first tests. This is a learning curve, and they have allowed us to implement or to understand other models. There are other models that allow us to understand the origin of the winds, to understand whether the winds coming into the city have gone through areas that have had forest fires, so that we can start understanding a cause and effect relationship between forest fires and the quality of the air that we breathe in the city. In recent years, we had many improvements, but this is just 5 points as a summary. First, we were able to have a better representation of the height and the thermal inversions. We created our own model to respond to the various models that we manage as well in our ministry, that we were able to have an inventory every year. And besides this information that we have based on this model that allows us to make calculations in a faster way, and in the need, in the measure of the need that our teams wanted. When we started working with NASA, we realized that the global models are extremely important. So that's how we realized that a model, that the one that we have been using with machine learning, that I will address later on, we realized by learning about how to use these models that we could increase our impact. So we started working with other models coming from the US or the European Union. We understood that the more models we have available, it's much better in terms of the quality of the forecasting. And in terms of communication, we have the new portal for air quality that was launched some days ago that will be relaunched soon as well. So going specifically on the type of work that we did with WRI in 2021, WRI asked us, what do you guys need so that we can see if we can provide? So that's how we started working on a specific project, because this required a very important technical process of understanding the data, understanding the assimilation data to the model. So once we trained this model, which is called GOCF, which is the NASA model, it became operative in 2022. And during that period, we started to use it as part of our global forecasting models. The most important piece of this is that these model and others have been very important to start quantifying what is the actual concentration that can be ascribed to forest fires in terms of air quality in the city. So let's say that if in the alerts we have an average concentration of 40 micrograms, we can determine that perhaps 20 of those 40 are related to a biomass. So this is how we started managing alerts this year. And another important thing is that with WRI, we did not stop there. We did several explorations as well to work with the characterization of images, satellite images as well. And I have been kindly invited as well to participate in communities of practice where we show the experience of Bogota to many other participant cities in the CanAIRy Alert. Of course, I would be really happy to continue participating with them. What you see to the left is the CanAIRy Alert forecasting portal. These are the results that we have that have some specific quality criteria. And based on that, and here we can see the specific results that are generated by this model adjustment. Now, just for the sake of time, let me just finalize my intervention by mentioning that once we understood all of these tools, we reached this result. This is what people actually see. We gather all of the information related to air quality to show a specific indicator. This is how the people see air quality forecasting. And this is one visualization, but there are many ways to view this data. And what we are showing can be very similar to what we have in the monitoring network. So this provides a high trustworthiness of the data, reliability, and this forecasting has all of the global regional forecasting processes behind that, as well as the interaction with all of the local regional sources is there as well. What this portal has as well is that it is not only providing air quality forecasting that the Ministry of Health or the Ministry of Education need based on the plans that they have to implement, but rather this portal, depending on the area it is located, is different. So for example, here we selected the community of Kennedy. We see all of the various recommendations that can be done by the citizenship, both in environment and in health. It is also possible to download a newsletter or a sort of bulletin that can be read and analyzed that provides information around how we reached the data, how we have, for example, the specific information that is being added so that we can see what is the best way of visualization and forecasting that citizens see. As I mentioned before, this portal was developed by the Ministry of Health, and we participated in the communication from our servers with their servers so that we can reach this tool that, as Kata was saying, is also part of the Ministry of Health. So this is one of the many indicators that we have in Salud Data, and that is why we have it published here. This would be the end of my presentation. I hope that you use this portal. This is not the only way that we use this to forecast. Also, from the Aire Bogotá app, we see the air quality forecast that can be seen there. And the plan for the future is to continue improving the communication of those forecasts to more cities. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Edison. And of course, we will continue to be invited to this group community of practice because, of course, this is an acknowledgement to the incredible work that you've done as a city. And when one city sees what another one is doing, a lot of experiences can be shared and learned. So now I will ask Armandina to make her presentation. Armandina is online. Armandina, please go ahead. The floor is yours. Thank you very much, Dr. Betty. Thank you, everyone. It is a great honor to be here with you all to share a little bit of these experiences that we've had in Nuevo León, in the Monterrey metropolitan area. The truth is that we are so happy to hear from all of the experiences that you've had in Colombia, from Edison, from Dr. Urrutia, from other panelists as well. We really admire and respect your work. I am learning so much and I'm taking notes of everything you're doing. So I would like to share with you all today the progress that we've had using the air quality forecasting to declare the various phases for atmospheric contingency plans. And this has entailed a lot of effort. So we really appreciate the support of WRI, particularly the support of Beatriz Cardenas and her team, because this has allowed us to make progress in various areas that without their support, it would have been extremely complicated. So in order to respect the time allocated for this, let me just mention that we are a network that operates in the metropolitan area of Monterrey. The name of our network is called Environmental Monitoring System, called as CIMA. We have 15 monitoring stations distributed in the metropolitan Monterrey area. And we have 3 mobile units that allow us to monitor areas where we do not have fixed equipment or there are other types of complaints or citizen reports. And these allow us to understand other types of problems that might also need our attention. We have also a control center for air quality where we show the operation of the whole network, and we continuously receive information around all of the various stations, as well as a feed from cameras that are strategically located in the city to determine the existence of any source that may be creating high concentration spikes in those stations. So in this way, we can have mobile sources or other visible sources from those cameras, or we can also locate the existence of a fire or any kind of related incident that could be impacting air quality. This is where the air quality information is also done for forecasting to see if we are going to issue an alert or a contingency plan in the metropolitan area. This is the processing that we do during this model. All of those 15 stations are automatically operating, and all of the information that is generated is validated by an automated system. This information is later published or sent to the various sources of information. We have a website, as I showed you in the first slide, airy.nl.mx, and this information that's shown on the web page provides data around air quality forecasting. All of that information is available on the website of this model that was generated by NASA and WRI that allow us to determine air quality that can be communicated to the rest of the population continuously. And this is information that is also presented to the governor. This data allows for public policy decisions to be made regarding the sources of emissions, considering air quality forecasts. This information that is public is also presented to the governor, as I was saying, in various meetings that we have every week. And based on that information, he provides instruction around what needs to be done. Now, we also have a WhatsApp group where we have around 300 participants that are representatives of the fixed and mobile sources from municipal and federal governmental levels that are providing instructions around the forecast. So even though these forecasts are just beginning, we do not have the level that Bogota, for example, has. This model has been extremely useful, at least in decision making. And this is the way these forecasts are being currently presented. We have the forecast of 5 stations first. We started with 5 stations first because we had a very deficient network. We needed some equipment, and therefore we decided to use only those stations that had the necessary equipment. So that's why we started with 5. And we hope that we can continue having the support of WRI and NASA to continue growing and strengthening the rest of the stations. This is the name of the stations that are used currently. Considering the data that come from the NOM 172, we prepare, let's say, the more digestible version of this table so that it can be communicated to the population. So we move to the next slide. By means of this type of bulletins or newsletters. The first one is for general population that is communicated via social media. Because even though the information is available on the website, not everybody has a possibility to read it. So what we present here is what we also present to the governor. He has requested to present this information in a more detailed way because we see the highest expected value in the metropolitan area, and he has requested to determine all of this per areas. So all of this information is determined based on the responses to atmospheric alerts, which is our main objective, especially in those cases where we have high concentration spikes or peaks, either because we have bad meteorological situations or fires as well, or certain situations in which there are anthropogenic cases in some specific times in the year, for example, New Year's or Christmas. This forecast allows us to anticipate. Forecast is complemented with the information that we have with analyzing the various stages or events in the metropolitan area that could present spikes in the data with other platforms or other satellite sources. So based on all of this, The stages of the contingency plan model are developed. We have, for example, one phase that is preventative, which allows for all of the various sources to keep awake in a way to continue working on analyzing the data. Then we have the alert of contingency phase 2 and 3, which is when we reach higher levels. It's worth it to look specifically what this data means. This is all available on our website. And this is what is communicated first to the minister and then to the governor, and then we issue the bulletin. And this is how specifically the population is alerted around all of the precautions that need to be taken, and also the various sources that have been identified. To wrap up, some of the challenges that we have in this program is that there is no national regulation that establish criteria. Criteria are local in general, so there is always criticism about whether the phases that we have are related to the actual levels that other ministries use. Therefore, there is a need to make the levels more strict, and we have been working on that. However, the request is for us to be much more strict in this regard. Another challenge is that the levels of air quality have been made more strict. However, at a national level, those maximum levels have not been modified. So that has also made things complicated because we have had a good response by the various sources, and they have definitely aligned with the minimum levels that we require. But it's also a challenge to actually measure that. The next point that is actually a challenge is the communication that we can have with the citizenship. Sometimes technical information cannot or is not very well communicated to the general public. As I mentioned, this declaration of a contingency goes through several levels before it is actually made public. So we would love to have a much more automatic way of publishing this information and make it public to everyone. This is how we work, and these are the challenges that we've had, which at the end of the day, we are measuring air quality for the best quality of life of our citizens. Thank you. Thank you very much, Armandina. Okay, let's start the panel now. We have Edison and our two speakers here. So if I may, Diana Ramirez from Bucaramanga and Ana Zuleima from the metropolitan area of the Valle de Aburrá. I'd like to ask very similar questions. First of all, what is the situation in your cities related to high pollution events in your cities, and what are the tools that you currently have and use? Diana, can we start with you, please? Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation. So to answer that question, one fundamental aspect to improve air quality and to meet the reduction of those levels is by means of the implementation and creation of policies, public policy to meet the needs of the city. In recent years, Bucaramanga has made very important progress in air quality management by means of the analysis of the atmospheric and pollution data that has been generated, including the identification and characterization of emission sources and the meteorological characterization of the city that represents the behavior of the atmosphere and pollution. Besides, we have promoted the generation of knowledge and the assessment of the impact. So the management that the city is leaving behind is a roadmap for the next 10 years that will be used as public policy. And this planning tool gathers all of the existing information and establishes the needs of the municipality to reduce the concentrations of atmospheric pollutants. This policy, of course, is aligned with all of the planning instruments and the air pollution control that has been developed regionally and nationally to achieve the objective that we have set for 2030, which is the average objective that WHO has provided and suggested. However, we require some measures to strengthen our policies to meet this goal. We need to improve the quality of the data. We need to improve the quality of the existing information and to also implement meteorological models of air quality that actually represent the behavior of the atmosphere. Thank you very much, Diana. Ana Soleima, could you provide an answer to that question as well? What are the tools that the Aburrá Valley has? Thank you very much for this invitation. I'd like to join my voice to the acknowledgement that Armandina mentioned before. It has been incredibly enriching to listen to the various speakers in this close to 2 hours of meeting that we have had in the Aburrá Valley. This valley is made out of 10 municipalities, and it holds around 4 million people. Its total area is around 1,150 square kilometers, of which 180 are urbanized. And this is just as a backdrop to understand that the urban zone is where the 95% of the population is concentrated. So we have big challenges around not only the geography that we currently have, which is very different to other areas of the city. It is a mountain range. So this, of course, entails certain different challenges around atmospheric pollution that are part of the public policy due to the impact that it could have in the population. So based on this, I'd like to emphasize that air quality for us is a system that needs management that not only needs to be managed at a short term, but rather at a long term as well. When you analyze this from a very comprehensive way, you realize that we need and use some of those tools that are, for example, the air quality management plans that Carolina mentioned, that these are comprehensive management tools that require the participation of various stakeholders. So at a longer term, we need to include the possibility of other people to participate. And this is what brings us together today, which is a discussion around atmospheric pollution, which in the Aburrá Valley, this is one of the strategic pillars of air quality management. So one of the most important tools that we have around management is a long-term view to create the most impactful strategies that we can, with time, understand how they are reducing the atmospheric pollution that we in the way that we require. And another instrument is part of the plan, which are more operational plans to face those specific pollution events. As a metropolitan agreement that we have around some of those specific short-term episodes, if you will, there are agreements reached around a series of actions that include the monitoring tools, the management tools, and the implementation tools. So this is what I would like to emphasize around the type of work that we do and the importance that these tools have so that we can continue providing this type of support. To have real-time data is extremely important in order to strengthen our monitoring air quality tools. In the Aburrá Valley, we have a very robust monitoring system. We have 24 pieces of equipment of PM2 that monitor air quality in real time. And we have been able to include all of the low-cost monitoring microsensors that make up the 350 microsensor network on the scientist citizens program that we have. And this has been key to understand the behavior of air quality in some specific critical aspects. So we have the real-time monitoring, the capacity that can be developed by means of practicing so that we can understand how other tools are actually used. For example, for forecasting, by means of statistical analysis and other types of monitoring that considers other type of variables to understand air quality much better. Some other panelists have mentioned this before, but this has to do to biomass, fires, and other pollution external events that are not part of our governance. So in order to round up the idea, it's important to mention that this whole air quality system is created by various areas. So we have monitoring, assessment tools, and governance so that decision-making can be informed. To respond to the question or to add more information to this question, in the Aburrá Valley, we have had the opportunity to also use the expert criteria that is related to being able to use all of this information related to forecasting, meteorology, limit layer behavior, what happens with the components in the vertical axis, what happens with black carbon analysis. And based on that, using expert criteria, we are able to determine whether this alert in the Aburrá Valley can be understood. This is a way of building a system that needs to include long-term and medium-term objectives to provide this data to the population in a clear way as possible. Thank you very much. So with these 4 participations and these 4 interventions, we have been talking about this afternoon about the complexity of this issue and the necessity of comprehensively managing air quality. And in this 4th panel, we are going towards a technical, but with the utility of when do we declare contingency? How do we manage those specific events and episodes that are low or short-term episodes that require immediate action? And I'd like to also ask this question to all of you. How can organizations like WRI and other organizations that are working with these cities to how can they get closer to the needs of these cities? You have, for example, the expertise, you have the monitoring tools. So how can we use these short-term pollution events help us to improve the quality of the type of service and system that we have generated so that we can continue building on the trust of the citizens? I believe that we are very short in time, but if you could have your wish list around what you would like in terms of better data, better knowledge, better tools around this very complex issue, which is the air quality management forecasting, what do you think is missing for cooperating entities to consider? This is a question for Armandina, Adriana, and Edison. Edison, let's start with you. Okay, I have a twofold response. The first one is to look inside the cities, and the second one is to look outside of the city. Because in many cases, the alerts are not necessarily issued for situations happening inside the city. So the transference of knowledge will always be important around the various sectors, academia, government, and others, to understand the problem. However, what we've learned with the work that we did with WRI is that it is extremely important to also understand what is being done outside of the city around the characterization and how to get closer to these other institutions, for example, working with the Keller Institute or working with NASA. If WRI didn't exist, it would have been extremely difficult to gather this type of cooperation. So getting closer to this type of specialized academia help us to reinforce from within the tools that we have available. So there are also various understandings around how to handle an alert, for example, how to reduce management times, how to make it more effective if there is a need of doing that. And how, when you have this type of a process with other institutions, cities don't feel as alone as they could feel if they didn't have this type of partnership. We have been working for 10 years in this, and the idea is to not start from zero if there are other cities that like to do this. There are many cities that can draw on their experiences to understand what type of methodology can be used to get started at least. The view outside of the cities is also important, as I was saying, in terms of how do we handle, for example, forest fires. This goes beyond the city. This is something that includes a national view, because surely there are many issues of control in the territories that some entities are not considering them as a problem. And we were able to convince the ministry that this was indeed a problem. And I think that there is a very important opportunity right there. Because in those territories, these type of interventions are extremely necessary, not only in terms of the type of action that can be taken, but also in terms of the planning that needs to be done. Yeah, in this case, we're talking about even cross-border type of transportation plans, right? There is this need of connection between territories. Diana, please. What would be your wish list in this regard? in terms of better cooperation among cities? Well, I want to echo what Edison is saying around the accompanying process that we require from the cities in order to improve the understanding of the atmosphere understanding. In each territory, Bucaramanga has experimented, has undergone two very important pollution events. And it's only after 2018 that Bucaramanga had the possibility of creating this type of process. So that's when we realized that we had these episodes, and that's when the lockdowns in COVID-19 started, when we realized what type of action could be taken. This is an alert that the city provided around the restrictions that were usually done. So there are several actions that can be taken by the city, for example, in terms of plate control of vehicles, also to understand the model or the year of those vehicles, but also trying to understand the various actions coming from the territory are very personalized, and they need to be very much focused around improving the health quality of the citizens. And there have been some progress in the environmental side of things, but I believe that here in Bucaramanga, at least, we need to make much more progress around this. This knowledge around this pollution events need to be strengthened much more, and they need to be acknowledged around how this is impacting our most vulnerable population as well. How can we bring this management of air quality to neighborhoods and to municipalities? Because those who work in environment, we are very technical minded. But of course, what we're doing is trying to improve the quality of lives and improve the health of citizens. So that's what I would say in terms of wish list, so that we can actually protect the lives of our citizens. Thank you very much, Diana. Yeah, effectively, this link of health and pollution, and here in Bogota, you have this very well understood around communication. This is a very, very important aspect. Thank you very much. Armandina. Thank you very much for this question. The truth is that first, I have a lot of things to thank for on behalf of the Nuevo León, because being able to work in this type of projects and also allowing us to get closer to this type of knowledge that we're now part of has allowed us to build our capacity. And this is something that we will continue to work on. We need to continue strengthening our capacity. The thing is, we also have several things to continue to do. We have very little staff. If you staff, you know that we are understaffed. Doctor, you know us very well. Anna Suleiman knows us very well as well. And you know that we are, even though we are a big metropolitan area, we are understaffed. So to continue strengthening this capacity will be extremely, extremely important. For example, those projects around forecasting particles less than 10 TM, these are very particular aspects of the metropolitan area. We currently have 5 stations that are part of this forecast. So the plan is to connect more stations that need to meet the requirements. We have strengthened the requirements that we have to to meet, and we now have more information that is extremely useful for forecasting. Eventually, we'd love to include inventory data that would allow us to leave behind some of the biases that we currently have in the bias. But in general, I would say that we are extremely pleased and happy with the amazing support that we've received by means of this project to have a much more robust process. And we just love to continue working on this. Thank you very much. It's great that you are mentioning the community of knowledge because we have a new face for that. And we'd love for Ana Suleima and Diana to be part of this as well. And in this cooperation, we are always learning from various sides. We have a lot of expertise, a lot of knowledge, and the understaffing situation is, of course, important because sometimes we demand a lot from the agencies and we don't understand the amount of work that that entails. So the academic world can also support with that before requesting things. Ana Suleima. Yeah, just echoing the various interventions. I'd like to mention that international cooperation is extremely important around generating these opportunities towards cooperation with entities outside of our borders. It would always be important to have access to knowledge that can feed our decision-making process based in science. Because it is true that there are many decisions that need to be made by the environmental authorities that need to be focused and based on technical evidence. So from the Aburrá Valley, for us, it's extremely important to work with universities and to back up all of the decisions that we are making or support all of those decisions in the best available knowledge. So having the cooperation of international organizations is and will continue to be important to make progress around the various understandings of the problem. Our area, as well as many other parts of the country, have many limitations. There are many territories in the country that have been able to generate much more robust systems, but there are many territories in the same country where the information is still not in real time and it's not in the quality that is expected. Therefore, international cooperation, as I was mentioning, is key to have more access and more fairer access of information by the territories. I also believe the role of international organizations is important to set this issue in the political agenda in those places where those technical people don't reach necessarily. There are certain aspects around this type of issue that may not be as popular, that are not going to generate or make politicians more popular. So I believe that the role of international organizations to push this type of messages to the political agendas that need to include it in their messaging is also very important. Us scientists, technicians, fall short to this type of objective. Therefore, the opportunities are plentiful and the challenges are also plentiful as well. So in the Aburrá Valley, we have a very, very big challenge around vehicle regulation. and particularly cargo transportation is one of the most important challenges that we've had recently. Around the use, for example, of diesel and gas, of reducing, for example, the 15 parts per million of sulfur in diesel or 30 parts per million of sulfur in gas have allowed us to see an improvement in air quality. For example, in 2016, the highest spike of PM2 was 118 micrograms per cubic meter in March. And in 2018, the greatest spike was 76 micrograms. So we see that the big actions have very significant impact in the reduction of these pollutants that are the most important for our health. So the opportunities around working with international organizations will always be critical to strengthen the quality of information that citizens receive. This is a problem that is connected with everything else. I believe that many of the challenges can be summarized in those comments. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this comment, and totally in agreement that those who are managing air quality in cities need to focus on how to support areas that haven't had access to this support. We see that when we have a city that has made a lot of progress, the attention goes to them even more. And how can we redirect the attention to those cities that need it most? That is a big question that I believe we need to continue working. And I would add that in the case of WRI, we want to continue collaborating and always continue to generate knowledge with the experts in each of the cities. We can, of course, share this information, but the richness exists in the exchange of information. So thank you very much. Daniel, thank you very much for this attention. Thank you everyone for being here in this panel. Thank you everyone.